Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and tonight I'm here with a comparison between the Erzetich Mania and the Kennerton Vali headphones. A couple days ago I did the second part of my review on the Mania, and I realized that the closest of any other headphone I've heard to the Mania would be the Kennerton Vali. And I've only had the Mania about 5 weeks now. It's on loan to me, but I've had the Kennerton Vali for about a year, and it's pretty much my go-to headphone anytime I'm listening to pretty much any kind of rock music, anything from soft rock, classic rock, even harder stuff, even metal. Not a huge fan of metal, so I don't listen to a lot, but get a little bit into some speed metal and some industrial. Any of those types of music, the Vali is pretty much my go-to. And also with electronic music and, just about any kind of electronic music. I just love the way the Vali makes it sound. So anyway, the two headphones are kind of similar. They're different in a lot of ways, and yet they're similar in a lot of ways. So I thought I'd do a comparison tonight. So first, I give you a look at the Erzetich Mania. It's a full-size, over-the-ear, semi-open back headphone. And the Kennerton Vali, which is also a full-size, over-the-ear type of headphone, but this is considered to be a full open back headphone. Anyway, the Erzetich is made in Slovenia, and the Vali is made in Russia. The Erzetich currently sells for 1,199 euros, which I believe works out to about $1,380 US at today's exchange. But it can be purchased through their US distributor, which is onsongaudio.com for $12.50 right now. The Kennerton Vali sells, and this depends on the type of wood, there's several choices of wood, starts at 790 euros, which is about 881 American dollars, all the way up to 1,450 euros, which is 1,670 US dollars. Almost double in price depending on the wood. So it's available from quite a bit cheaper than the Mania to actually quite a bit more expensive depending what type of wood you get. The Mania is only available in the one wood. The Mania, which the ear cup is a solid piece of wood. It is not a veneer. It's a solid piece of what they say is linden wood, which is native wood from Slovenia. And this particular Kennerton Vali that I have, I believe this is a Peruvian walnut. And I just wanted to point out that this one is about a year old, and the current Kennerton Valis have black yolks and black grills instead of the aluminum color. So they do look a little bit different now, and I don't think the Peruvian walnut's available now, but there are, like I said, probably 8 or 10 different wood types available. The ear pads on the Mania are very thick, very soft, but Erzetich is decided to use a synthetic leather and not use animal products in their headphones. The Vali it's also a very thick ear pad. It is tapered, and this is made of a genuine lambskin leather, and also the headband is covered in the same leather. The Mania weighs in, according to Erzetich, at 460 grams. According to my kitchen scale, it goes 475 grams. And the Kennerton Vali is a little bit heavier at 520 grams. Both of these headphones use a detachable 2-meter long cable with a standard 1/4 inch or 6.3 millimeter plug at the headphone end, and they both use 4-pin mini XLR connections at the headphone end. You can see here, and they, like I said, they both use the same type plug, and the cables are interchangeable between the two. I've switched them around a few times and they work fine. Both of these headphones use a 50 millimeter dynamic type driver. The driver in the Erzetich is made of titanium, and the driver in the Kennerton is what they call a biocellulose. The Erzetich has an impedance of 80 ohms, and the Kennerton has an impedance of 32 ohms. They both have similar adjustments, a screw type adjustment, but there is some differences. On the Erzetich, the screw type adjustment here, what it does is it raises and lowers the ear cup. You can loosen a little bit, slide it up and down. But the ear cup, the yokes do swivel and tilt both, which is a little bit different than on the Kennerton. The Kennerton also uses a screw type adjustment, but on the Kennerton, the yokes don't swivel. They do rotate up and down, but they don't swivel side to side. So what this does is this screw type adjustment not only lets the yoke slide up and down to adjust the height, but it also rotates, and you can turn the ear cup with that and then lock it into place where you like it. It's actually a design I think works pretty well. Although switching the headphone from one person to another, it's a little more complicated to adjust, because you've got to adjust not only the height, but you've got to adjust the angle of the ear cup to get a good seal on the person's head. So they are a little bit different in that respect. Comfort, they're both pretty comfortable in my opinion. Neither one is a light headphone, but they're not extremely heavy. The Erzetich, I probably give a little bit of an edge to the Erzetich in comfort, and the only reason for that is they're both comfortable. They both have nice ear pads. The Erzetich does not have, it has almost no clamping force. I mean, there's a little bit there, but there's almost none. You don't feel it squeezing on your head at all. Where the Kennerton definitely has more clamping force, and for that reason, I'm going to give a slight edge to the Erzetich in comfort. But the Vali, though, because of that clamping force, does feel more secure on my head. When these are on, I make sure I'm putting them on the right way. Anyway, when these are on, I can, pretty much move any position I want and never worry about these moving at all. Where the Erzetich, because of not having the clamping force, you have to be a little bit careful. If I were to lean over and pick something up off the floor, I might, feel a little better grabbing onto the headphones, because I might lose them. So, you give up a little bit of comfort for the clamping force, but they're more secure on your head. As far as build quality and appearance, the Kennerton has let's start with the Erzetich on this. The Erzetich has kind of a rustic look. The ear cups are the lindenwood, and it's kind of, a rough finish, and I'm sure that's deliberate. I mean, it's kind of a furniture look, kind of a, kind of wood you'd build, using a wood frame house or something with exposed beams. It's kind of a deliberately rough finish, and it does have a nice look. The grill, I believe, is aluminum, and it's a nice looking headphone, and everything fits together well. The headband, the clamps and all that don't have the size and weight and the strength of the clamps on the Kennerton, which I'll show you those. Here you can see the clamps on these, which is a solid block of aluminum, and the screw and all that. The yokes are solid aluminum, a little more solid, a little more secure. The finish on these, I would say, is a little more refined. You've got your aluminum yokes. The ear cups are, very smooth, it's a sanded, polished finish, and the grills are magnesium, I believe. So anyway, a little more refined look to the Kennertons. Nothing wrong with either, but as far as looks and appearance, I think I give a little bit of edge to the Kennertons, but nothing at all wrong with the Erzetich. It's a nice looking headphone. So what about sound? I would say, let's start with tone balance. I would describe the tone balance of the Erzetich as slightly V-shaped. It's got a bit of a peak in the mid bass. I would say probably around 80 hertz. About, V-shaped as opposed to neutral. Definitely has a bit of a emphasis in the bass. And the Erzetich also has a bit of an emphasis in the lower mid treble, probably around 6,000 hertz. It's got a bit of a peak there, which gives it quite a bit of sparkle in the mid treble, especially up in the cymbal range, that sort of area. The Kennerton I would describe as basically neutral through the mid-range and treble, but it does have a definite emphasis in the mid-bass. It's got a lot of punch in the mid-bass, so yeah, it's slightly different. The Erzetich more of a V-shaped, and the Kennerton basically neutral with an emphasized bass. Not overly emphasized. In fact, I love the bass in the Kennerton, and that's why it's been one of my favorite headphones for the last year. Both I would describe as on the warm side of neutral. Both are smooth and kind of forgiving, and very similar mid-ranges. I'll get into that in a second. The frequency extension, I would say, is good on both, but I would give a little bit of edge to the Kennerton. I think the Kennerton goes a little bit deeper into the sub bass, and I think that it also goes a little bit higher into the treble, where the Erzetich rolls off a little bit faster than the Kennerton does. Even though the Erzetich does have a bit of a peak at about 6,000, it seems to roll off a little faster, getting into the higher treble up in the 10,000 hertz range. The sub bass is very good on both. Like I said, I think the Kennerton might go a little bit lower, but they both, the sub bass hits about the same on both of them, about the same amount of force. Both, I would say, just about perfect in my opinion, especially, like I said, rock music, electronic, that sort of thing. Both have very good sub bass, go low. The bass, I would say, they both emphasize the bass a little bit, but not overemphasize. They both have very tight, very clean bass, no muddiness, nothing like that, not bloated, not overemphasized. These, in my personal opinion, the Vali has the best bass of any headphone I've heard. Not the most bass, but the best balanced, cleanest, tightest, most refined bass of any headphone I've heard. And the Erzetich is a close second. Very, very nice bass on it. Like I said, just tight, clean, but has some weight to it, and just makes, gives most music, especially rock music, just gives it more substance, more bass. Neither one of these headphones ever sounds thin or lacking in the bass. I would say that in the mid bass, the Kennerton definitely hits a little bit harder. There's a little bit, the Kennerton has more of a peak in the mid bass than the Erzetich does, but not substantially more, and the Erzetich does not lack at all. They both have exceptional bass, all the way from the sub bass to the mid bass. The mid range is very similar on these two headphones. Both of them I would describe as creamy, rich, and lush in the mid range, and the vocals just sound incredible, especially female vocals on both of these. There's absolutely no harshness in either one of these, and there's no sibilance in either one of these. Just beautiful mid-range. That's what I really like about these. And if anything, I would say that the Mania has a slight advantage over the Vali in the creaminess and smoothness of the mid-range. They're both great, but the Vali is a little bit more in your face in the upper mid-range, where the Mania is a little bit more laid back and a little easier going, and just a little bit thicker and just slightly richer than the Vali. But they're both very close, and they both have beautiful mid-range in my opinion. Getting into the treble, I would consider the Vali pretty much neutral in the treble. In the lower to mid treble, I would consider it pretty much neutral with a slight roll off in the upper treble. The Mania, I would say, has a bit of a bump in the mid and lower treble, like I said earlier, around 6,000 hertz, and does give it a little more sparkle, a little more in your face in the treble. Things that really stand out are cymbals, especially the high end of cymbals. I guess that would be like the shimmer in the cymbals. Really kind of jumps out at you in the Mania, where the Vali, it's definitely there. It's not lacking at all. It's just not quite as in your face. It's like I said, I would describe it as more neutral in the treble. The upper treble, they both roll off slightly in my opinion. Compared to a more neutral headphone, like say the Hi-Fi Man Sundara, which I would consider pretty neutral in the treble. They both roll off slightly compared to that. I would say that the Mania rolls off a little faster than the Vali does. So when you get into the upper treble, the Vali actually, the treble is a little more present than the Mania. As far as detail and clarity, I think they're both excellent, but yet neither one of them ever sounds analytical. Neither one of them ever reaches that point of being harsh or where it emphasizes flaws in the recordings. I love a really detailed, almost analytical headphone at times, but at other times I don't. And the reason why is because an analytical headphone, if you listen to nothing but perfect recordings, it's going to be great. But as soon as you pull out a recording that's less than perfect, it's going to reveal all those imperfections. And if I listen to nothing but a highly detailed analytical headphone all the time, I would probably never listen to 90% of my music. And that's not these headphones at all. Either one of these, they're both very well detailed, very clear, but yet they're not analytical to the point where you don't want to listen to your less than perfect recordings. Both of these are very forgiving of recordings that aren't perfect, and I could pretty much listen to my entire music collection with either one of these headphones and be happy. The imaging and separation, I would say, is very good on both of these. They both separate the voices, the instruments, nothing blurs together. I can locate where every sound is coming from on both of these. Both very good in my opinion. The sound stages are a little bit different. I think the Vali has a little bit more width to the soundstage than the Mania, and I'm guessing the reason for that is probably the Vali, I think, is a little bit more open, where the Mania is considered a semi-open back. So I would say the Vali has a little bit more width, but I think that the Mania has a little more height to the soundstage. With the Mania, I'm hearing more sound coming from up higher. I kind of wrapped around my forehead. So I think the Mania has a little more height, and they're both pretty good at depth of the soundstage, but I think the Mania might have slightly more depth than the Vali does, but they're both real good as far as soundstage. I have no problems at all with either one of them. Dynamics. Okay, this is where there's a pretty big difference in my opinion. The Mania is what I would consider very smooth and almost a soft sound, but very, very pleasant, very easy to listen to. The Mania is probably one of the least fatiguing headphones I've ever heard. I would compare it to the Hi-Fi Man Aria, which is an excellent headphone in my opinion. And the Aria, it depends on the amp. The Aria, if underpowered, can pretty much lose its dynamics, but if you've got a lot of power behind the amp, it can be a bit dynamic, but not highly dynamic. Well, the Mania is kind of like that, you know. With some power behind it, it's not lacking in dynamics, but it's just kind of middle of the road, and not the most punchy sound, but very relaxing and just very pleasant. The Vali, on the other hand, I would consider to be very dynamic. It has a very punchy, very hard-hitting sound, especially in the mid-bass. You know, just hits real hard. And, you know, on some music, I prefer that. I really prefer that hard-hitting mid-bass. Other times, you know, I kind of like the more relaxed sound of the Mania. So, you know, it's kind of a toss-up there. But, you know, I do, I guess I'm going to kind of give the edge to the Vali there. I do like that dynamic sound that the Mania just, you know, like I said, the Mania is more of an average headphone as far as dynamics. And the Vali, I would say, is up there in the top as far as being dynamic. Amping, the Vali is not amp dependent at all. The Vali sounds good with just about any amp I've ever used. It's very efficient, very easy to drive at 32 ohms. Doesn't take much power at all. Sounds good on every amp I've tried. Probably the best I've heard it though is with the Felix Audio Echo, which is an OTL Type 2 amp. Warms it up just a bit, gives it a little more sub bass. Sounds excellent with that amp, very good match. The Mania at 80 ohms is a little bit harder to drive, but not extremely hard. And little more amp dependent. It changes its sound a little bit more depending on the amp than the Vali does. But both sound very good with a dead neutral solid state type of amp, but like the Vali, and actually a little more so, the Felix Audio Echo tube amp really warms it up and definitely gives it a boost in the sub bass. Gives it a little more weight down low. So both of these headphones match up exceptionally well, in my opinion, with the Felix Audio Echo tube amp. And once again, that's a OTL Type 2 amp, and you wouldn't think it would be a great match for either of these, but I've had that amp for a while now. I'm very, very impressed with it, and a lot of headphones that theoretically shouldn't match up with it sound exceptional on that amp. So, and no exception here. These both sound excellent with the Felix Audio Echo. And it's kind of in the right price range for a headphone of these prices, so I'd recommend the combination. Music, like I told you in the beginning, the Vali has been my go-to headphone for just about any type of rock or any type of electronic music. It's been my favorite headphone for those types of music, and it still is. And I would say that the Mania is the first headphone to come along and give it competition in that respect. Same thing, just works excellent with any kind of rock or electronic, but yet both of these headphones sound excellent with just about anything I've listened to. Something like Norah Jones, which is, more of her music varies, but most of it has kind of a jazzy sound and all that. And Norah Jones sounds incredible on both of these headphones. So they both work well with just about any music I've thrown at them. Recording quality, like I said earlier, they're both very forgiving, and I can listen to pretty much my entire music collection with either of these headphones and be happy. Neither one is super revealing and showing flaws in the music. Like I said, they both have good detail, but they're not hyper detailed or analytical to the point that you can't listen to less than perfect quality recordings. So basically what it comes down to, I would describe the Mania as being smooth and creamy, and just very, very pleasant to listen to. I was listening to some Fleetwood Mac a couple nights ago, and don't get me wrong, the Valley is incredible with Fleetwood Mac, but it may have even been a little bit better with the Mania, because it took a little bit of punch. I guess it depends more on my mood. I'm not going to say that the Mania was better, but I was getting ready to go to sleep and trying to relax, and that soft, kind of laid-back sound of the Mania just worked really well for me at the time. I'm guessing at other times I might prefer the more dynamic sound of the Valley, so I guess that's more subjective. Would be more what mood I'm in, which I would prefer, and of course what I'm listening to. The Valley, also smooth and creamy, especially the mid-range, but the Valley has a lot of dynamics and a lot of punch to it. Sounds like drum beats, all the way up to snares, even piano notes just kind of jump out at you. It just has a really, substantial level of dynamics where so many sounds just kind of jump out and hit you. So I guess, like I said, it depends on my mood. Sometimes I feel like the Valley's kind of beating me up a little bit, but other times I really like that dynamic sound, and then the Mania is just a little more laid back and a little more easygoing. So I guess really it depends more on what kind of mood I'm in, which I'd want to listen to. I would say, you want my opinion on which I prefer? I can't really do that. I like both of these headphones a lot. I would say probably as far as appearance and refinement, I would say I'd probably give an edge to the Valley. It just has a more refined look. The headband, all that, the yokes, everything about it, the ear cups. It just has a bit more refined look. So I would say as far as that's concerned, I would give the edge to the Valley. The Erzetich is just a little rougher. Nothing wrong with the looks in my opinion. It just doesn't quite have the refinement of the Valley. Price-wise, you can get the Valley substantially cheaper than the Mania, depending on the wood, or you can spend more than the Mania, depending on the wood. So, according to Kennerton, though, I don't think that the wood has much of an effect on the sound. I read that they said that because of this being an open back headphone, that the wood type is more just, for looks and appearance, more so than really having any effect on the sound. As far as which I preferred, sound-wise, it's a tough decision. I really like both of these headphones. Like I said, I guess it depends kind of on what mood I'm in. Do I want it to be a little more punchy and a little harder hitting? I would go with the Vali. If I want a little bit more laid back, easygoing sound, I'd go with the Mania. The Mania, I've never felt any fatigue at all, you know, no listening fatigue from the Mania, where, you know, I could probably listen to it for hours and never get tired of listening to it. Where the Vali, you know, it hits a little harder, and it can wear you out a little bit after a while, but you can turn it down a little bit. So I guess that would fix that problem. So really, I can't tell you. The Vali has been my favorite and go-to headphone for rock and electronic for like the last year, and the Mania gives it a real good run. So you know, I guess it depends on if you're trying to make a choice. I guess, you know, they look quite a bit different. You know, one's made in Russia, one's made in Slovenia. You know, there's more flex in the price on the Vali if you go with the different woods. And I mean, even the cheapest woods are woods like oak and things like that. So I mean, they're not using cheap wood or anything like that. So anyway, like I said, I really like both of these headphones. The Mania's got to go back in a few days, and I'm gonna miss it, but you know, it's not that far away in sound from the Vali, so you know, I can totally live with the Vali. So you know, it's just kind of a toss-up to me. They're both, I highly recommend both of these headphones. So if you're considering either one of them, I don't think you could go wrong. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. This has gotten longer than I had planned. So that's about it for tonight. I've got, also have the Erzetich Phobos, which is the big brother of this headphone. And I'm going to try to get a part 2 of my review on that out in a couple days. And in the meantime, once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video helped you make your decision, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you're all welcome to join us over at the Headphone Experience on Facebook. Thank you very much for watching my video.